we're going to be looking at the fluid dynamics of the body of the heart. And it's been an amazing experience to research it because it's just such an incredible system. It's just mind-blowing. And just the actual reality of the way fluid moves through our body and the way the heart works. Absolutely mind-boggling. And there are so many ways of looking at it and ways of interpreting it that it was really hard to actually come up with a lesson or what to do. Well, it's also complicated by the fact that, you know, I haven't been able to do that much work in the last 2 weeks. But just the simple process of actually paying attention to our heart and sensing how it functions within the body is mind-blowing. And today we're going to look at the pulse and maybe get an overview of where the heart is. You know, there's these, you know, live from your heart and all these sort of things that really have become, you know, cliches. But the process of actually paying attention to your heart and how it interacts with our environment is pretty damn amazing. I mean, it makes a sound. It makes a sound that can be heard, and not just in the heart, but, you know, through the whole body, as you'll soon see. And that sound reverberates in whatever acoustic environment we're in. And just tuning in and feeling that the rhythmic sense of it is mind-blowing. And it, you know, then you start to tune into that and you consider it in terms of how you're feeling, how open you are, and your relationships, you know, whether you're in sync with someone, you know, how your heart is breathing. It's just amazing. And, you know, it doesn't need any mystery or conflated claims, because just the reality of it is just so spellbinding. So look, I'm going to share my screen because it's really useful to get a good sense of where the heart is and how it works. And yeah. Okay. So here's a picture of the heart in situ with the left lung faded, so you can see the structure, but you can see it sort of sits in, there's more lung behind than there is in front. It sits to the front and it balances on top of the diaphragm, sits on top of there, it's attached by the pleura. I'm going to change this. There we are. This is a good one, looking at the position of the heart. It sits in the center of the chest. And if you feel your own chest, your breastbone here, from the sternum you come down, there's a little bump. The first bump you come to is this manubrium here, this sternal notch, or the sternal angle they call it. It's at the second rib. So if you go down here from the second rib and count down, which is the first one you feel under the collarbone, because the first rib's under the collarbone. So you go 2, 3, 4, 5, down to the 5th rib, and that's where the heart is, in the front. So you put your hand there and feel that. And the thing is, you know, we hear this, that it's a little bit over to the left. Well, you can see it is a little bit over to the left, but it's not so much that it's a little bit over to the left, but that it's turned to the left. Look at this beautiful GIF from my email. You see, that's the front of the heart, and this is the back of the heart. So that's the right, that's the right ventricle and atrium, and this is the back is the left atrium and ventricle. So it sits across, you know, the apex is over here. So here around the at the back of the heart, that's the atrium and the ventricle on the left side, and that's the side that pumps blood out and into the body. And in the front here, That's the right atrium and ventricle. And this is the vena cava that enters on either side into the, so blood comes from the body into here. It enters into the, to the right ventricle here, and then that gets pumped into the lungs. And then from the lungs it comes back into the left atrium and then the left ventricle and out again. And look at this. This is a good picture of the aorta. This is the major blood vessel that comes out of the heart and sends blood through the rest of the body. It's a big ring there. It's a really special place, that one. And these three blood vessels here, you see, if we look from the front here, they're sort of traveling across that arch, and that's going from the middle of the chest through toward the back. And then the aorta continues down the left side of the spine. And the vena cava, which is the vein that's the opposite of that, comes up the other side of the spine. And these three arteries, they come off here. They serve, well, this one here, it serves the, we'll call the right, so the left brachial artery that goes out to your arm, and this one here is the left common carotid artery, and this one here is the right brachial artery, which also becomes the right carotid artery. It branches off somewhere. And let's just look at the actual system. Where are we? Is it up here? Yes. That's the thing. You know, we have the blood goes to every cell in the body. So there's 39 trillion cells in our body. And a blood vessel will come close to, within three cells. A cell, will have access to a capillary. And that's why the system is so long. The capillary system is absolutely massive. So we have these, actually before I get on to that, we have the aorta, we have the heart here, and then we have the aorta that comes down the left-hand side of the spine here, or in the front there. It's really protected because it's important, because if anything happens to the aorta, it's really difficult. It comes down along behind everything in front of the spine here, and then it just branches off and goes down into each leg down here. We're going to be feeling the pulse there. We're going to be feeling the flow. We're going to feel it in the wrists. We're going to feel it in the carotid artery, and we're going to feel it down here in the pelvis. But it extends right through to the extremities and comes back again. And the blood, it's when it's coming out of the heart, it's full of oxygen, and it's being pumped, and then when it's coming back, it goes to the extremities, wherever that is. It goes in a loop, and the longest loop down to the feet. So blood to circulate there would be 45 seconds to a minute. It'll do one complete revolution, and let's just time that from now. So blood's come out of the heart, it's gone down the aorta, flowing through that big artery, and it can split off in different directions. And in fact, if we look at the this picture here, this is a map of the, actually let's look at this. There are three major types of, you've got the arteries, of which the aorta is the biggest, then they become smaller, and then they become arterioles, really, really tiny, and they get into capillaries. And the capillaries are so tiny. I mean, they're a 3,000th of a centimetre. Think of a centimetre ruler, with 10 little millimetres on it. How big those gaps are, and then divide that by 3,000, and that's how thin these capillaries go. They're just big enough for one red blood cell to slide through. Oh, so actually it's 1 minute and 10 seconds. I forgot to look. So it's already gone through around one loop and it's come back again. And I'll tell you when the next loop is completed. So it goes through, it's pumping through. You know, it takes about 1 minute to get there and it goes more quickly through here. And then, of course, it slows down through here. And then on the other side, it comes back. Now, there are more veins than there are arteries, and they're generally thicker. And there's a reason for that in that we store blood in the venous system. So it gets pumped through here, through the arterial system. It's delivering oxygen to all the cells. And then when it goes through the capillary cells, it takes out waste products, you know, sugars and glucose and carbon dioxide, which then gets taken back to the heart. Oh, we've just done a second loop. The blood has gone round twice since I've been speaking now. You know, and then it delivers these other things back into the right side of the lungs, and then we breathe it out and we contribute it to the atmosphere. And there are these different loops that it can take. You know, the first artery that comes out of the heart actually services the heart itself, the heart muscle. So that's a very short loop. It comes out of the heart, goes, you know, through the tissue in the heart, and then reverses and goes into the venous system, and then comes back in again. Or you know, the heart, the blood could come out of here and it could go into the upper body, just into your chest, and then around, you know, then from there back into the venous system, up into the lungs, and then back into the heart. Or it could go around here into the liver itself, which is an amazing organ, or it could come down here into the gut, in which case from the intestines, everything goes through there, then it gets filtered through the liver, and then back into the venous system and up into the right side of the heart, and then up into the lungs, and then back again. Or it could go down into the kidneys, another blood filter, or down into the lower body. So they all have these different functions and all these different lengths. And you consider that the length of the system, the length of all the blood vessels, if tied to end, is 100,000 kilometres. That is 100,000 kilometres of potential routes through the body. I mean, is that mind-blowing or what? And, you know, you consider, you know, all these different places that it can come. You know, it splits off from the aorta and, you know, goes into the chest or into different parts or down into the pelvis. And there's a lovely illustration I've got here. You know, which once again, this is just an approximation of the arterial system. You know, and then you've got the venous system that's going in the other direction. But every tissue in your body that's, you know, right out to the skin has this blood coursing through it, and this series of blood vessels. So, you know, we are hollow. In fact, let's just... And that's the interesting thing. If you sense inside your body... What else I had to show? Oh, yeah. Yes. Heart chambers, yes. Now, the heart itself is pretty amazing. The beating that you're hearing when you hit the heartbeat is actually the valves opening and closing. So this is a cross-section taken through the heart here. So once again, this is the back of the heart. Here, this is the left atrium and the left ventricle. And this is where the two blood vessels come in from the heart, from the lungs into the atrium here. And this is the the right atrium, and this is the vena cava. This sits underneath the diaphragm, and this is above the diaphragm coming from the head, and blood flows into this atrium. It's pushed down through this valve into here. Comes into here, and notice the shape of the chamber. It's pointed at the bottom, and the heart, the way the heart is offset, it means that when it beats, it sort of twists a bit, which you can see in this. See that sort of twist, how it's rotating around, twists that way. It's quite a vigorous little movement, isn't it? So, and this. Notice that the tissue here, the muscle here, is thinner than the muscle on this side. That's because this, on the left side, has to do a bigger job. It's pushing the blood right through the body. And it comes into here through that sinus, and it goes out through this valve here. And notice it's curved in the bottom, so that the, where are we? It comes into here. It pushes up here, and then when it sort of falls back down again through the weight before it goes out into the lungs. So it spins as it goes through the system, and then it comes into here and it spins. It's pushed out through there. So that's the thing, that it rotates, and the heart's often thought of as a pump. But I mean, it seems crazy to think of us like a fountain or something where this is driving all the water, because it's the whole system itself that's driving it, really. I think I really like Gil Hedley's perspective that the fluid system is much more like the water system on Earth. It's shaped by the structures that it flows through. So, it flows more quickly through thick arteries or blood vessels than does through the tiny ones. And through different spaces it will move, and the way we move, the action of the muscles also contributes to the flow of blood back to the heart. And also, if we're tense or if we're stressed, that also influences the flow and the way it moves through our body. Yeah, I think we've done enough with that. Oh no, we haven't. One more thing I want to show you is a blood vessel. Because the blood vessels, my goodness, that interior chamber that we saw in the heart that we're looking at there. Well, this interior part of the blood vessels here, the lumen it's called, that goes into the heart. It's continuous. It goes into the lungs and it's continuous. And it's a muscular structure. The arteries have these 3 layers, and the veins are bigger because they're carrying more generally, but the arteries are stronger depending on where they are. Whether it's an artery or whether it's an arterial. So because it's under more pressure through the heart pumping the fluid through there. And when it gets down to the arterioles, it's just, it's just this interior layer with one layer on the outside, and that makes it permeable. And then you have this situation where, fluid comes in, and because it's being pumped from the heart, the pressure, and it's bumping up against this capillary network, it tends to push the fluid out. And then when it gets through the capillary network and it's doesn't have that pressure, it's tending to draw fluid in, so draws in all the impurities and all the other products we don't need, and moves them out through the body. So each of the blood vessels are, they're mind-blowing. Mind-blowing that something so small can be so, so powerful and have such a powerful influence. Now, the heart attaches to our diaphragm. That's a really interesting fact. It's wrapped around this. It sits in a structure called the mediastinum, or mediastinum, depending on how you want to pronounce that. And it sits in the center. So, you know, the aorta moves behind into the space behind there. And this is the pericardium, which attaches to the diaphragm and attaches also to the front of the sternum here, or the back of the sternum, I should say. And there are 3 layers in the pericardium. The outside layer is tough and you know, strong, so it stops the heart over expanding, getting too full. The inner 2 layers, they have this sort of gel or fluid between them, so they slide, and that enables the movement of the heart. And you know, we often look at these structures and it just looks like that, but look at this. This is a 13-year-old in an MRI machine, probably being told to hold their breath because, you know, the diaphragm's not moving here. But look at all of this. Isn't that amazing? Everything's being pulled like that. I mean, feel that inside yourself. Put your hand on your chest and just feel inside the lungs. Everything there is all being moved as we breathe. And it's extending through this incredible network, getting down to, you know, this unimaginably small levels and moving through. And the whole thing keeps on pumping. It's pumping 60 to 70 times a minute, depending on our level of fitness, all our lives. It never stops. And you were looking at the right ventricle here. Remember, the left ventricle is behind. And up here we can see that that's this is the aorta up here. This is the right subclavian or the brachial artery there, and that's the coronary, the carotid artery up here, and this is it's the left, the left artery, and this is the right brachial artery, and the carotid artery comes off up here, up to the head. And that's an animation of a heart, looking at it from the inside, how these valves open and close. And that's the sound we're making. And we're going to pay more attention to the sound next week, the beat. This week we're just going to sense the flow. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? That does that 70 times a minute, non-stop, all your life. Yes. Now here, one of the places we're going to look at the pulse down here is down in here. See, there's the front part of the pelvis here, the front of the wing and the pubic bone. There's this ligament here, the inguinal ligament. And there's muscle that comes up over the front here alongside the spine, and we'll be feeling through that to get to this artery here. And same thing in the wrist here. It's on the side of the thumb that is easiest to feel. And it's interesting, you can see it's right out here, but probably you'll be feeling it through there. We can sort of reflect. The sound reverberates and reflects, and the feeling of the blood vessels is interesting as well. You know, you consider that people are, a nurse or a doctor will put a syringe into there so they can actually feel where it's a tangible thing. You can actually feel this system. But they're the major arteries, the major blood vessels. And the thing that's really interesting to sense, I feel, is the other stuff. It's the whole fluid system. To consider you are a series of tubes that extend right out to from the midline out to the center, out to your skin, to every structure in your body, into the bones. And everything is flowing out to there and back to there. So, to actually sit with it is a really interesting thing. So let's try that now. Could you find a place to lie down on the floor? So lie down on your back. So lie here on your back on the floor and sense the weight of your pelvis. The weight of your pelvis falling down toward the center of the earth. And sense the weight of your rib cage. Moving as you breathe. And then sense the weight of your head. Sometimes that's not so easy, if our neck is tight. Because it means if our neck is tight, it means we're lifting our head. You don't need to lift your head. Just let it go. Sense the weight of your head. The weight of your arms and legs. You could notice those parts of yourself that you're holding on to. It's like you're lifting them away from the floor. We're in the field of gravity, and a lot of our postural system is designed to counteract that by moving. So there's a sense of moving away, or a sense of rebound away from the pull of gravity down. But of course, when we're lying on our back, we don't need to do that. We can just let everything go. And that makes it much easier, if we let everything go, to feel the movement of our heart and the flow of blood through our body. We'll take your hands and place them on your rib cage, on the front of your rib cage in an easy way. Your elbows could still be on the ground. But just over the breastbone, the sternum there. And feel the heart it's between the second rib, so it's up near the upper part of the ribs there. Just put your hand there and see if you can feel it beating, feel it moving. What's the sense of the heartbeat? Well, consider each side of your body. Left and right legs and arms. And the left and right sides of the head, neck and torso. And think the right side of your heart is receiving heart. You know, the blood comes out of the heart on the left via the aorta, moves up and then back and down alongside the spine, then in front of the spine, and then it splits off and at the pelvis and goes down each leg to the extremities, and then back up through the venous system into the vena cava, the venous equivalent of the aorta, and then it comes up and goes into the heart again. So the blood that's depleted in oxygen and that is cleaning our body, that's carrying all the waste products, comes up into the right side of our heart and then is pumped from the heart into the lungs on either side. Think of that for a moment, just the right side of your heart and the vena cava on the right side of the spine. Above from the head and below from underneath the diaphragm, blood flowing into the heart there and then out into the lungs to each side. And right through that series of tiny, tiny tubes, so small only one red blood cell can fit through, that's where oxygen exchanges with carbon dioxide. And then the oxygen-rich blood comes from the lungs into the left side of the heart, which is at the back, and then is pumped out through the rest of the body. So consider from the lungs into the left side of the heart, and then out into the rest of the body via the aorta. Think of that circulation system extending all the way through your body, from your heart down to the legs, out to the hands, up to your head, and back again. And now take your hands and place them underneath your ears. Third finger underneath your ears. So at the skull there. And then move your hands down the sides of your neck and feel the sides of your spine, the bony part in the side of the neck. And notice that you can get in front of the bone of the spine. You know, you can place your fingers between the spine and the voice box, the larynx and the trachea. And move your fingers up so that they're just behind your jaw. And with your fingertips, find the common carotid artery on the left and right sides. Now, for some of you, finding your pulse may not be easy. You may have had trouble with that in the past. Well, This whole class is really based on feeling the pulse. So if you can't find it, don't worry. Just keep listening. So you place your fingers up there behind your jaw and in front of the spine. And to find the pulse, move your fingers slowly. Remember, you're listening for a sound, you're listening for a beat. This pulse. So you move them slowly. A lot of people have trouble feeling their pulse because they move their fingers too quickly. You've got to move slowly, and you've got to move your fingers as if they're ears. And when you find it, it's really definite. It's a strong pulse. And when you get there, stay there and just feel it. Listen to that pulse. So that pulse is a reflection of your heartbeat. It's a fundamental rhythm within us. And it's a rhythm that announces itself to the world, and you can hear it. Just in the same way that you could possibly hear it. Now you're feeling it with your fingers. You could also, it has a sound, doesn't it? And that's the sound of your heart reflected through this artery. And that sound is reflected through all the tissues in your body. That flow in this rhythm is moving through your body, your whole body. Of course, you can't hear the really tiny things. It's much easier to pick up the sound of it on a big blood vessel. But you can hear it with a stethoscope or some other instrument all over your body. And of course, the more you relax yourself, the easier it is to feel. So this blood vessel comes out of the aorta, and it comes on the left-hand side, it comes directly from the aorta. On the right-hand side, it comes out of the brachial artery that also supplies your arm. And right close from where you are now, it splits off into two, and half of it goes into the skull case and supplies blood to the brain, and half of it goes into the face. In this never-ending succession of smaller and smaller tubes. So consider the feeling you have in your arteries here, this carotid artery, and then just sense inside the face, in your tongue and your nose and your mouth and your eyes, blood that's passing under your fingers now will soon be in those other tissues. And it's all moving. Feel the blood flow through your head. And down through your neck, back into the heart, on the right side. And then back out the left side of the heart and around your body. You move your eyes a little bit side to side in a way that you could still feel the pulse. You know, are you in harmony with that pulse? When you're moving your eyes? Turn your head a little bit. Only as far as you can still feel the pulse. And if you lose it, you stop and, come back and get it again. And feel even when you're moving, this circulation of blood continues. Well, leave that. Let your head down. Let your arms down. And rest there. Your body is made up of cells, which are mostly water, filled with lots of stuff, but each cell is made of water. And every cell, or every 2 or 3 cells, is attached or very close to a capillary. So it's receiving nutrients from the blood. So we're this fluid system, not just in the blood vessels, but in our cells. Now, feel your pelvis. Let's find the pulse further away from the heart. So find the front of your pelvis, that bony wing at the front of your pelvis, and find the pubic bone. And between the front of the bony wing of the pelvis and the pubic bone, you have this ligament, and underneath that ligament you have the psoas and iliacus muscles that pass up over into the alongside the spine. You have the belly muscles, and you have nerves, and you have these blood vessels. So that the aorta comes down alongside the spine on the left and then comes in front of the spine, and just about where the top of the pelvis is, just below that, the fourth vertebra, in line between the fourth and fifth vertebra, you have it splits off and goes into the two femoral arteries once it passes out of the pelvis. Now feel that. Feel down between the pubic bone and the front of the bony wing of the pelvis, and there's a hollow. You can sort of press down in there, and you can feel there's all that muscle and the front bit of the pelvis there. But go slowly from the back from the pubic bone, and you can sort of feel the edge of the psoas muscles, these deep muscles underneath the belly muscles that come up over the front of the pelvis, and then go back to join on the spine and go right up to where the diaphragm is. And just listen for the pulse here. So there's more tissue here, and you've probably got more clothes. You could lift your shirt out of the trousers or something so that there's less fabric there. But move your fingers slowly here and listen for the pulse here. Once you find it, it's really definite. It's just like the carotid. Feel it on each side. And once again, the more relaxed you are, the more you soften in your shoulders and your neck and your face, the easier it is to feel. So take your time here, listening. And once you find that pulse, just sit there. Beating in the same way that it does in the heart. And just before it splits off into the two arteries that you're holding now, there are these other arteries that provide blood to the structures of the pelvis, just as there are that supply blood to the rib cage and all the organs. So consider from here, around where you're holding, feeling the pulse here. The blood circulating down to all the tissues in your pelvis. This is a fluid system that is as complicated and remarkable as the water system on Earth. And big arteries like the aorta or the femoral arteries that you're holding here, they're like a big river floating down from this source in the mountains. And the smaller arteries that branch off there, they're like little streams. And the capillaries, it's like the delta of a river before it enters the ocean. Or perhaps, water as it flows out of a stream and across, into the soil in little rivulets and continues its journey to be recycled. And think from your fingers here, the blood is going all the way down to your feet. Can you move your toes? In traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about flow as being all important, circulation. Well, consider as you're moving your toes here, what would happen if blood doesn't flow freely through some parts of your body? Consider arthritis. Other areas where we have problems. What does the blood flow through that area like? Spread your attention around your legs, around your knees, around the back of the thighs, and the pelvis, the buttocks, the hips, and through your calves. Blood circulating, delivering oxygen, and then removing waste, taking away carbon dioxide and excess glucose, excess stuff. It's amazing to think that we are self-cleaning, self-healing. And right down to your feet. And as you're feeling the pulse here and moving your toes, move your eyes up and down with your toes, closed eyes. But sense this flow of blood through your entire body. Healing, energizing, life-giving. And then leave that, let your arms by your side. That 100,000 kilometres of blood vessels through your body, 80% of it is taken up with the capillary system, the tiniest blood vessels. So as you consider blood flowing through your body now, sense, the depth and the width through your arms and legs. Head, neck and torso. It's amazing flow of blood. That carries all these messengers and little machines, different types of blood cells that can keep us healthy. Our immune system flows through here. You are alive. And that sense of life, it's the heart. Well, we're pronounced dead when the heart stops. So does that mean that the feeling of the heart beating is the feeling of life? Feel it in your chest. Alive. And you don't have to do anything. That's the amazing thing. It's controlled by your autonomic nervous system, which is a blessing and a curse. Because this type of structure that blood flows through determines the quality of the flow and the state of those tissues. If you're really tense or if everything's really stiff all the time, that affects the flow of blood. So your state of mind, your mood, that influences the way your heart works. And just the same way, if you start to run faster, you soon get, in the aorta, there's this part there that measures the levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen. As soon as you start working more, that balance changes. So it goes, okay, speed up the heart. Same thing if we get a shock or a fright, the same process is happening between the aorta and the brain stem. These two main areas that control that. So, look around, open your eyes, just look in the room now. And notice how your pulse varies. With your thoughts. And with what you see. Now close your eyes again. Consider that flow through your whole body. And now, could you hold on to your left wrist with the right fingers? Now hold on to the hold it over your chest. Find the minimum amount of effort to hold on to the wrist and feel with the three fingers, the tendons in the wrist. They connect to all the muscles and down into the hand, and there's a sheath of fascia that wraps around the wrist. It's protecting things in here as well. And then feel with your fingers on the thumb side. It's easier to feel it there. And find the pulse on your left wrist. The angle of your hand, at the wrist, and where you put your fingers. All make a difference. So if you move your hand into a different position, you bend it forward, you may have to move your fingers slightly to still feel the pulse. Because you're moving in between all these muscles and tendons to feel that. But once you get that pulse, just sit there and listen to it. Feel its quality. This is probably the easiest pulse to find. And, don't worry if you can't find it, just keep looking, moving your fingers slowly, because you're listening. And the thing is that your fingers are resonant structures, because they too have a pulse going through them. They have the very same blood vessels that you're holding onto here, or a continuation of it right there in the tips. So feel, once you've found the pulse on the left wrist there, see if you can use that pulse in the left wrist to feel the pulse in the fingertips. To feel the flow of blood through your fingertips. So sense this loop here between your hands, because blood comes out of their aorta and it goes into both of the brachial arteries out into the arms, and then comes to the end point, whether that's around a particular cell or a bit of bone or a bit of tendon in a joint, or right to the ends of the fingertips, and then it becomes an arteriole and then becomes a venule. Artery to arteriole to capillary to venule to vein, and then that flows back again and back down into the heart and out and around. And, acupuncturists, they feel 12 pulses, 6 on each hand, deep and shallow. Now, you may have noticed here that it's a little bit easier to feel the vein, or the artery, I should say, the blood vessel, and feel its shape, its roundness. So hold your blood vessel a little more lightly. Acupuncturists or traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, they gauge the quality of the flow, the quality of the pulse. What is the quality of your pulse? Does it feel robust and vigorous? Or, would you characterize it as peaceful and calm? Or sluggish, or just consider, allow yourself to meditate for a while on the quality of the flow here. The way this rhythmic pulsing continues. And how that relates to the feeling within you. If you're feeling well, if you're feeling robust, it's all systems go. It's action time. So the flow of blood is going to reflect that. If you're feeling terrible, well, your body's working overtime to bring you back into balance. And maybe that'll be reflected in the quality of the flow, the quality of the beat. And your right hand is probably sitting over your chest, and you're feeling the beating of your pulse, and you can feel the beating of your heart. It's moving in your chest, moving everything in your lungs. And of course, we haven't focused on the breath yet. But notice the rising and falling of your chest. How is that moving with the beating of your heart? The movement of your diaphragm. You breathe in, that's allowing this oxygen, all that oxygen is flowing into the body and it's pushing oxygen into the blood, and then carbon dioxide exchanges as you breathe out. And we give that to the atmosphere. It's our gift to plants. Leave that now. Let your arms down and rest there.
Sense the flow of blood through your body and the beating of your heart. Can you feel it now? Now hold on to your right wrist, the right wrist with the fingers on the left hand, and find the pulse here. Consider your breathing, the action of your breath and the beating of the heart. And there's something interesting happening here. Remember, if you have to find your pulse, move your fingers slowly, listening. And once you find your pulse, stay there. I noticed something curious. The number of heartbeats you have when you breathe in compared to when you breathe out. You know, does your heartbeat slow down when you breathe out and speed up when you breathe in? Maybe use your thumb to find the pulse on the right hand and place your right finger on the carotid artery on the side of the neck. Remember, just behind the jaw, in front of the spine. So you have the feeling of the pulse in the carotid artery, in the neck on the right side, and the feeling of the pulse in your right wrist. And we're noticing what's called your vagal tone. That's the ability of how the heart slows down when you breathe out and speeds up a little when you breathe in. And lift one leg up. Stand the foot on the floor. And then lift the other one. And do that slowly. Move your legs, one up and then one down. Feeling the pulse. How can you move with your pulse? How can you move in a heartfelt way? You know, this pulsing of the heart continues as you move. Move slowly enough that you can still feel it. You have to listen. Maybe that's what it means when they say, I really put my heart into it, or their heart's not in it. Because when your heart is in it, everything is unified. And to move like this and still feel the pulse, you really have to focus, don't you, and soften. To move in a unified way. You know, you're this series of tubes. You know, think of it from the inside of those tubes as the fluid system that's floating through your body. You know, you imagine you're a superhero, aqua person. You can turn yourself to water. Creatures try to attack you, it just slices straight through and you maintain your form. You're just this circulation, this endless flow. And then leave that. Let your arms and legs belong. How is the feeling of your pulse and your heart now? Sense of weight of your body now through your pelvis, your rib cage and head. And sensing your pulse, the flowing of blood through your body. Open your eyes and roll over onto your side and come up to stand. And sense how the fluid settles in your body.
position of your heart beating in your chest. And perhaps just hold your wrist or your carotid artery or anywhere that's easy and feel your pulse in standing. And right through your body. And think that is a reflection of your resonant heart. And slowly begin to shift your weight from side to side. Still sensing that pulse, and then walk. Transfer your weight, listening to your pulse. And you can let your hands down and just walk and sense the movement of your heart in your chest and the flow of life through your whole body.